various ways. I can truly imagine how much your suffering must really be to have to imagine what can reality be, what's a lie. You hear all kinds of news. You suffer more than those in the country. But I think that, with God's will, this evening we have a few minutes. We will have, in any case, exchanged freely on many themes.
Very recently, the feeds of African people were filled with good news. The government passed a law stating that if your company earns more than CFA 5 billion, approximately $8.8 million, you must build your headquarters within Burkina Faso. However, more details are now surfacing that prove this not only changes things in Africa, but also in the West. For decades, companies made billions from African soil while living somewhere else. Now Burkina Faso has said enough. If you profit here, you belong here. If you take from our land, you build on it. It's not a protest, it's a blueprint. But why is the West so worried since the news? Let's find out. You know, sometimes it's the simplest laws that hit the deepest nerves. When you first hear about Burkina Faso's new rule, that any company making more than $8.8 million must build its headquarters in the country, it sounds administrative, like some paperwork thing. But no, this is far bigger than that. This is about power. About finally deciding who gets to sit at the table when Africa's wealth is created. For decades, Africa's story has been the same old pattern. The land gives, others take. The gold comes out of African soil, but the profits fly to London or Toronto. Telecom towers rise across African cities, but the headquarters sit in Paris or Dubai. Even the decisions about African workers' salaries, hiring, and projects are made in boardrooms thousands of miles away. You can feel the injustice in that, right? It's like someone eating dinner in your house and sending the dishes to your neighbor's kitchen to wash. Burkina Faso just flipped that script. It said, if you eat from our table, you sit at it. That's it. That's the whole philosophy. And you might think, okay, but won't that scare investors? Well, maybe a few. But think about it. Why would a company afraid of belonging to the country that feeds it deserve to stay? The ones who truly believe in Africa, the ones who see the continent not as a pit stop but as a home, they'll stay. They'll build. They'll grow with the people. And when they do, everyone wins. Because when a company builds its headquarters locally, something magical happens. The money stops leaking. The decisions stop leaving. The jobs multiply. Imagine, local architects designing those headquarters, local engineers supervising construction, local cleaners and security guards earning a steady income, local cafes opening to feed the employees. Every brick laid becomes a vote of confidence in the country's future. That's the difference between dependency and dignity. Dependency waits for aid. Dignity builds its own skyscraper. Burkina Faso isn't doing this out of anger. It's doing it out of clarity. The government finally understood that if the headquarters, the heart of decision-making, stays abroad, then the real power over the economy stays abroad too. You can't talk about sovereignty when your biggest companies are just tenants in your country. So this law isn't about punishment. It's about presence. It's saying, we don't want your pity, we want your participation. And deep down, every African country watching knows it's right, because this is the missing piece, the quiet rule that could finally make wealth stay where it's made. That's why this law matters. It's not just about companies moving in. It's about Africa moving forward, one headquarters, one law, one courageous example at a time. So, let's slow down for a second and actually unpack this law, because honestly, the more you look at it, the smarter it gets. Here's the core rule. If your company makes more than 5 billion CFA francs, which is roughly $8.8 million a year, you must build your headquarters inside Burkina Faso, not a branch, not a rented office in a mall. A real headquarters, land, walls, staff, everything. Now here's the part most people miss. The law isn't one size fits all. The government actually created 4 revenue tiers, so companies are treated fairly based on their size. The biggest firms, those earning over 100 billion CFA francs, must build major headquarters that reflect their national and international scale. The next group, earning between 50 billion and 100 billion Central African francs, has slightly lighter requirements, but still must have a strong physical and administrative base inside the country. Then come firms earning between 10 and 50 billion CFA francs, required to construct medium-scale facilities suitable for local operations. Finally, companies earning between 5 and 10 billion CFA francs must still set up a proper registered office, though with more flexible building standards. In other words, the law is balanced. No one can say it's unfair or unrealistic. Big players carry big responsibility. Smaller ones get time and space to grow. And speaking of time, once the bill is passed by the Transitional Legislative Assembly, each company has 6 months to present its building plans. 6 months, that's fast but not impossible. The message is clear. You've made enough here. Now start building here. But the genius lies in the design. See, the Ministry of Urban Planning and the Ministry of Finance will work hand in hand. Urban planning will ensure buildings meet national safety, design, and sustainability standards. Finance will step in with tax incentives on construction materials, encouraging companies to use local cement, steel, and glass, all locally made. So, this isn't just about new buildings, it's about fueling local industries. And the best part? Local authorities have been instructed to fast-track permits. No more endless waiting. The government knows that progress dies in paperwork, so it's cutting the red tape before it can strangle the dream. Now think about what happens when this rolls out. Cities like Ouagadougou, Bobo-Dioulasso, and Koudougou could see entire business districts emerge over the next few years. Empty lots turn into headquarters. Jobs open up, new roads are built, cafes, transport services, and tech hubs all grow around those new offices. This isn't just law, it's an urban strategy, it's economic architecture. And here's what's to love. The tone of the government isn't harsh or controlling. It's confident but cooperative. It's basically saying, we're not pushing you out. We're pulling you in. Because the truth is, Africa doesn't need more companies visiting. It needs companies to live. And this law ensures that from now on, anyone who profits from Burkina Faso must be part of Burkina Faso's story, not a spectator watching from abroad. So, now let's connect the dots properly, because this law about headquarters isn't floating alone in the sky. It's plugged straight into Burkina Faso's deeper strategy, turning natural resources into national leverage, not just numbers on an export sheet. And the clearest window into that strategy is gold. Here's the plain truth. For years, the story went like this. Gold is dug in Burkina Faso, trucked out, sold abroad, profits booked offshore, and the country is left with taxes that never quite match the value of what is left in the soil. That's not an accident. That's architecture. The architecture of distance. Decisions elsewhere, benefits elsewhere. Now the country is dismantling that architecture piece by piece. Step 1 was the revised mining code. It raised the state's free carried share in large gold projects from 10% to 15%, which, in normal language, means the people of Burkina Faso automatically own a bigger piece of every big mine without having to buy it. Then came the second lever. The state can purchase up to an additional 30%. Add that up, and yes, the government can hold as much as 45% of a project. That is not symbolic. That is a seat at the table with weight. Now place the new headquarters requirement beside that. If you're a mining company operating at scale, think of projects like Sanbrand, Tuega, and Kiaka. You don't just extract and email a report to a foreign HQ. You base yourself here. Your compliance team is here. Your finance department is here. Your procurement is here. Your executives are here answering questions. Suddenly, royalties are not abstract. Environmental obligations are not distant clauses. Community agreements are not PR lines, they're neighbors knocking on your office door. That proximity changes behavior. When HQ is abroad, local content can shrink to a nice paragraph in a sustainability report. When HQ is in Ouagadougou, local content becomes supply chains, trucks hired locally, catering sourced locally, uniforms stitched locally, labs serviced locally, and welders trained locally. It's the difference between a budget line and a boulevard full of businesses feeding off a mine that finally acts like a part of the economy, not a bubble inside it. And listen, this isn't about scaring miners away. It's about aligning incentives. If the state can own up to 45% and the company must live where it earns, then both sides suddenly want the same things: reliable power, strong roads, fewer delays, better security, faster permits, because both sides suffer when the system is weak. That's how policy becomes partnership. Not because anyone is being nice, but because the math says so. There's another layer here we don't talk about enough: information sovereignty. When CFOs, geologists, and legal teams sit in Burkina Faso, the state doesn't chase data across borders. It can audit accurately, price risks honestly, and design smarter taxes because the real operational truth lives inside the country. No more policy by guesswork. No more negotiating against a spreadsheet you can't verify. And yes, this creates a runway for the future. If Burkina Faso wants more local processing over time, more value added before export, more technical jobs, more metallurgical skills, it's far easier to demand that when the decision makers live across town, not across oceans. You start with ownership shares and headquarters. You build toward beneficiation, engineering capacity, and genuine industrial depth, step by step, law by law. Let's pause for a second to say, big thank you to the Black Culture Diary community, where Black voices, stories, and legacies are preserved and amplified. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue. You know, when people talk about development, they usually imagine shiny roads, skyscrapers, and airports. But what if true development starts from a single rule that makes everyone build together? That's what Burkina Faso is doing. This law isn't just about making companies register headquarters. It's about rebuilding the soul of the country, brick by brick. Let's picture it for a moment. A company that's been operating in Burkina Faso for years, maybe a gold exporter, a bank, or a telecom giant, now has to set up its main office in Ouagadougou. That means architects are hired, engineers start designing, construction workers show up on site with hard hats and blueprints, local suppliers deliver materials, food vendors park nearby to feed them lunch. Every day, hundreds of Burkinabe wake up knowing they're part of building something that will stay. And that's the point: permanence. See, the problem with foreign investment in Africa was never that investors came. It's that they never stayed. They built wealth, not roots. But when a company builds its headquarters in Burkina Faso, it's forced to settle, not just physically, but morally. Its success becomes tied to the country's streets, schools, and neighborhoods. That's how patriotism is born, even in business. Now think of what happens to cities. Headquarters aren't just offices, they're magnets for life. Around every new building come coffee shops, small restaurants, tech repair stores, stationery shops, banks, taxis, and even art galleries. One corporate tower can create a whole district. It brings with it a new skyline, but also a new rhythm. The government understands that. That's why this law works hand in hand with the Ministry of Urban Planning. They want the headquarters to be more than functional boxes. They want architecture that reflects Burkinabe pride, sustainable designs, green spaces, and modern structures that make people say, yes, this is us. And it's not just about Ouagadougou. Cities like Bobo Dioulasso and Koudougou will see a ripple too. Because once you have companies headquartered there, local governments have a reason to build better roads, fiber networks, and public transport. The infrastructure will chase opportunity. That's how nations modernize, not through imported loans, but through self-triggered growth. And if you look closer, you'll see something even more powerful. Each building, each construction site becomes a classroom. Young people learn real skills: carpentry, engineering, design, and urban planning, all by being part of this wave of building. That's knowledge that stays, even after the project is done. You see, this isn't just economic reform, it's psychological repair. It's giving people the feeling that their hands are shaping their own future, not someone else's balance sheet. So when the first glass headquarters rises above Ouagadougou's horizon, people won't just see an office, they'll see proof that the future is being written in Burkinabe concrete, not foreign contracts. And maybe, just maybe, that's the beginning of a new kind of pride, one you can literally walk past every morning on your way to work. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Here's the thing. What Burkina Faso just did might look small on a global map, but in the grand story of Africa, it's a shockwave. It's like throwing a stone into a still lake and watching the ripples travel far beyond where the stone fell. And those ripples are already moving across the continent. African nations are watching. Quietly, curiously, maybe even a little enviously. Because this one move, this simple rule about headquarters, has exposed something everyone knew but few dared to fix. Africa produces wealth for the world, yet houses none of its decision makers. The profits go north, but the poverty stays south. Now Burkina Faso is rewriting that reality, and it's doing it without arrogance. Just logic. The logic that says, if a company extracts from our soil, it must also invest in our soil. If you mine our gold, you build your office here. If you sell to our people, you employ them beyond the factory floor. You can't keep living in Africa's wallet while sleeping in Europe's house. And the brilliance of this? It's contagious. Imagine if Nigeria decided to follow suit and told all oil companies, headquarters must be in Lagos. Imagine Ghana doing the same with its cocoa giants, or Kenya requiring tech firms to be based in Nairobi. Suddenly, Africa would stop being the resource continent and start becoming the decision continent. That's what Burkina Faso just started. The mindset that ownership is not about control, it's about closeness. It's about saying, we don't want to chase our money abroad anymore. We want it to live next door. And you know what's funny? The West can't really argue with it, because this isn't a rebellion. It's not nationalization or expropriation. It's a simple administrative reform, but one that hits at the foundation of inequality. Burkina Faso didn't raise its fists, it raised its expectations, and that's far more dangerous to the status quo. Even African youths across social media have started talking about it. You'll see posts saying things like, if Burkina Faso can do it, why can't we? That's how movements begin, not from politicians, but from pride. A new generation of Africans is tired of outsourcing everything, even dignity. And that's where the real power of this law lies. It's not in the paperwork or the penalties, it's in the example. It shows that Africa doesn't need to wait for anyone to sign off on its progress. One government, one leader, one idea can start a continental chain reaction. Someday, when people look back, they'll see this law as more than policy. They'll call it what it truly is. The moment Africa stops renting space in someone else's story and starts building its own headquarters in history. Now, let's be honest. No bold move in Africa ever comes without noise. Whenever a country starts to stand up for itself, the same old chorus begins. You know the one, oh, this will scare investors. This will hurt the economy. This is too risky. It's almost predictable. The same voices that stayed silent when Africa's wealth was leaking out are suddenly worried now that it's staying in. Burkina Faso's government knows what's coming. There'll be pressure, both loud and quiet. Some companies might threaten to leave. Some Western media outlets will write the usual anti-business headlines. There might even be whispered warnings from financial institutions saying, be careful, you'll lose investor confidence. But deep down, everyone knows what this is really about. Control. See, the moment an African nation takes control of its own economic structure, the world gets uncomfortable. Because for too long, Africa's value has been managed externally. Its money, its image, its narrative. Now one small country is saying, no, we'll manage it ourselves. That's not defiance, that's adulthood. And adulthood always makes those who profit from dependency nervous. But Burkina Faso has prepared. This isn't some emotional decision made in anger. It's a calculated step, rooted in logic and timing. The government didn't just say, move your headquarters. It created a system that actually makes it easier to comply with tax incentives, simplified permits, tiered construction requirements, and even partnerships with local authorities to speed things up. And let's not forget, companies need Africa more than Africa needs them. The continent's markets are young, growing, and full of potential. So if a few firms leave in protest, others will fill the gap. Africa is no longer begging for attention, it's commanding it. Still, there will be challenges. Infrastructure will have to expand fast, with more electricity, better roads, and stronger internet networks. Urban planning offices will need to adapt. Universities will need to produce more trained professionals to meet the demand for architects, planners, engineers, and managers. It won't be smooth, but that's fine. progress never is. And the people, they're ready. You can feel that quiet pride when someone says, "Our country is doing something the big powers didn't expect." Because even with the challenges, there's a sense of direction now. For once, the future isn't being dictated, it's being designed. So yes, there'll be backlash. But the truth is, pressure only scares the weak, not the determined. And Burkina Faso's leadership seems determined, not in the angry, reactionary sense, but in the calm, methodical way of people who've already decided they're not turning back. In the end, that's the beauty of it. The resistance will make the achievement even more powerful, because when the world doubts you and you still rise, that's not just progress, that's proof. So here we are, standing at one of those quiet crossroads in history that nobody realizes is history until much later. Burkina Faso's new law might not make breaking news on CNN or Bloomberg, but one day, scholars and storytellers will trace a turning point back to this moment. The moment Africa stopped exporting its decisions and started keeping them at home. You can almost feel it, that subtle shift in energy, like the first breeze before a storm of change. Because this isn't just about buildings, taxes, or corporate paperwork. No, this is about ownership. About finally writing the ending of a story that began centuries ago, when Africa's resources were taken and its voice silenced. Now the voice is back, and it's steady. What Burkina Faso has done is more than pass a law. It's planted a seed that will grow into a tree of responsibility, of presence, of pride. A tree that other nations will soon want to plant too. You can already see the branches forming, in conversations among African leaders, in social media debates among the youth, in the spark of confidence returning to the continent's tone. And let's not pretend this will be easy. There will be days when the world laughs at this idea, the same way they laughed when African nations first talked about independence, or when Ghana printed its first local currency, or when Nigeria built its first refinery, or when South Africa said, "We'll host the World Cup." Every bold African move is first mocked, then studied, then copied. So yes, the critics will talk. They always do. But Africa doesn't move on noise, it moves on necessity. And this law is necessary. It's a mirror showing the continent what self-respect looks like in action. Because think about it, when a company's nameplate sits proudly on a building in Ouagadougou, it tells a story no foreign investor can ignore. That Africa is not a pit stop for profit, it's a home for partnership. When executives walk the same streets as the workers who make their wealth possible, something changes. The distance shrinks, the dignity grows. That's the future this law points toward, not a future of charity, but of accountability, not dependence, but direction. And one day, when you walk through the streets of Burkina Faso and see those towers, offices with African flags fluttering at their gates, you'll remember this wasn't built with loans. It was built with logic, with courage, with the quiet belief that Africa doesn't need to be told how to rise, it only needs to remember it was never meant to kneel. So yes, Burkina Faso's law is about business, but it's also about belonging, about coming home. And as that idea spreads, from Ouagadougou to Accra, from Nairobi to Abuja, from Addis Ababa to Johannesburg, the world will finally have to face the truth it's avoided for too long. Africa doesn't just have the resources to power the world. It has the wisdom to rebuild it. What happens when the gold stays? Not just the dust, but the decisions too. Let us know in the comment section. Could Africa's real power come from simply keeping its headquarters home? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.